This is your book.
Yeah, let's talk about your book.
So this is like top of the charts, #1 best-selling. Was it fiction?
Nonfiction.
They erased all the tweets. No, you're right. I'll look for it. So this is what happened, and I have no rational explanation. Okay, many of you guys know I was just on Jordan Peterson's show not that long ago. We taped it a few months ago. It just dropped. I didn't even mention this book in the show at all. So how Amazon works, and can I get like 5 minutes, because this is something I think it's going to be edifying, because this is an example of how the regular person can take on the publishing houses and win, okay? If you want, and it's unfortunate it's going to be through Amazon, but right now they basically have a monopoly. Soon there's going to be 4 or 5 venues. How it works is you create your document, make sure you get a professional book designer, so on and so forth. You upload it to their CreateSpace site. They have to clear it, and then once they clear it, it's on Amazon to buy, just like any other book. The problem is, when I sent them this, which is a collection, people always ask me anarchism, and I would get bored with it. I'm like, I don't have time to answer a question. I'm like, you know what? There is no book that people can go to get the complete idea of all the colors of the black flag. So I'm like, I'm going to put together this book of historical essays. So they'd email me back. They'd be like, we have a problem with this essay. When did this person die? I'm like, Michael Bakunin died in like the 1800s. This is public domain. We have a question about this one. And in between, it's 3 or 4 days. So you're sitting there, you don't know how many days it's going to happen. Then they're like, it's live. So if you can't have a release date. My next book, I'm going to get it cleared ahead of time so that I can hit published on December 1st. It drops. And no, I didn't mention it on any of the shows I did. I didn't have a big push because I didn't know when it was coming out. For a full day, it was the #3 book on all of Amazon. It was the top nonfiction book on all of Amazon. #1 was Dr. Seuss. #2 was some lady's novel. #3 was me. It wasn't like a spike because I did some show or someone mentioned it. The fact that so it was beating Obama, it was beating Hillary, it was beating President Trump, it was beating Oprah, everybody. And the only way this happened was through fans and word of mouth. I still don't understand how it happened because it's asymptotic. It is much, much harder to go from 20 to 10 than from 30 to 20. You're getting steeper and steeper. We did it. I'm delighted by the response. And this is a good example of how one person with a motivated fan base spreading the ideas of liberty as opposed to the Libertarian Party. I was on Breitbart earlier this week. Alex Marlowe, who's great, he's got a book out. We're doing better. Sorry, Alex. He was reading a whole section of Emma Goldman on Breitbart. The fact that I could have people talking about radical ideas, and people are hungry for radical ideas, shows that there is a market for it. People love to talk about these concepts, but they're not usually allowed to in corporate media. The LP wants none of it. And that's why they're a joke. And that's why when I take over, it's going to be really funny.
I think we were some of those fans.
You were. You guys pushed it. It means a lot.
Well, Are you still chairman, though?
I think I'd be chairman in the Chinese sense.
Okay, got it.
President.
So one of the things we had said, right, we keep getting super chats where people are like, they'll say something innocuous and then turn it into a pitch for Michael Knowles' book.
Sure. Okay.
So they'll be like, I can't believe what they're doing with cancel culture on social media. It's leaving me speechless, much like Michael Knowles' book, Speechless.
That's
clever.
And whenever, so we read them and it is clever. But I always say, so I've chatted with Michael a little bit and he's just like, oh man, they're still pushing that meme. And I was like, it's fantastic. I love it.
Yeah, it's organic.
I want everyone to buy your book so it's the top of the charts. I want everyone to buy Michael Malice's book so it's the top of the charts. I want everyone to buy Andy No's book, Unmasked, top of the charts. All of them. Then when regular people go to Amazon to find a book, what are they going to get? The most influential subjects are going to be written by smart people challenging the establishment.
And here, I'm going to let you guys in a little inside baseball. I've not told anyone this. This is the first time I'm revealing this. I got a call from one of the major publishers. There's only like 4 or 5 of them. And this is an editor I knew. And he goes, your book got flagged because whenever you have these independent books that do gangbusters, it's our job to be like, how did this happen? And he's getting on a call with me, and I like the guy, but I'm going to tell him, you guys are screwed. There's nothing you could do to fix your model. You're going to go the way of Warner Brothers or Atlantic Records, which back in the day, there were 4 or 5 record labels. All the records are through them. Now you guys still have a large proportion, just like ABC, CBS, and NBC have of sitcoms. But in terms of channels, there's not only in cable, like dozens. On YouTube, it's literally infinite. You are never going to be in position to be Random House or St. Martin's or Simon & Schuster the way you were, because I right now have demonstrated to you, and I'm not magic, that I could go there and beat you at your own game. And here's the other thing. Let's suppose that they can run the table on me. If I sold this book to them on January 1st, it would come out January 2023. What happened was in February, a fan of mine, Marla, said, look, there hasn't been a book like this. The last one that was like this in the 60s, why don't you do that audiobook? And I said, why don't you just do it from scratch? And it was out in May. So that turnaround is something they are not in a position to do.
So what this book is, it's a collection of essays
Correct.
by a bunch of famous anarchists.
And you're going to read one of them.
I am going to read one of the classic essays
Yes, sir.
shortly after we wrap up here.
For the
actually.
audiobook.
And but is there like a lot of original from you in this?
No. So the whole point of this is people always ask me about anarchism as if I'm an authority on the subject. Haha. The slogan I have on the back is the black flag comes in many colors. This has been a long historical tradition that is swept under the rug. There's very many variants. There's the hardcore anarcho-communists, which in many ways are predecessors to Antifa. There's the contemporary anarcho-capitalists, which the left wings do not consider anarchists at all. But this just shows alternatives to government and critiques of government from many different points of view.
Let me ask you about the political compass, right? People like to say that Antifa is the left libertarian quadrant, and that Antifa.
I wouldn't say left libertarian, but left certainly, yeah.
Right, definitely not libertarian.
Right.
People, like you just mentioned, anarcho-communists are the precursor to Antifa.
Sure.
I don't believe that those who would use force to impose their will over others would be classified as libertarian or anarchist.
But there would certainly be anarchists, like the guy on the cover, Louis Ling. His essay, he was arrested by Illinois for making bombs, and he explicitly set up for force. So their vision, this was their argument. And I since we're on YouTube, I have to make clear this is historical stuff. This is not something I'm endorsing people doing. It's not something I personally believe in. But their argument, because they came out of a communist tradition, which is not Marxist. So I would strongly encourage all the people who are libertarians who read this, the one essay they love the most is by Michael Bakunin from 1867. Bakunin was Marx's big rival for the international left. And his essay, 50 years before the Soviet Union, said, this is what Marxism is going to mean in practice. This is why it's a nightmare 1,000 times worse than the Tsar. You guys are crazy. You guys are evil. This is not what we're about. He called it. It's all in here. So they were for force in this sense. Their argument was, which again, I don't agree with, that because the police and the government are tools of the wealthy to exploit the population and to keep poor laborers starving and can't feed their kids. Remember, this is before the welfare state. It is our job to use weaponry as self-defense, to have this revolution, to have you guys not keep bleeding us dry.
So in that regard, perhaps I agree with you that they were the precursor to Antifa, which I view as an overtly authoritarian left movement because they attack regular people.
Correct.
So
they would not be in favor of that. Any of the people in this book would not be in favor of that.
Right. So I guess that's my distinction. The modern version of the people who claim to be left libertarian are anything but.
And let me also defend these commies from a lot of these anarcho-capitalists. Emma Goldman, who I love, was deported by Woodrow Wilson via J. Edgar Hoover during the Great War and sent to Russia. And she goes there because the argument is when push comes to shove, these people are going to be Stalinists. She goes to Russia. She's looking around. She's like, this is not what we're about. This is a disaster. She goes to Lenin's office, yells at him. She goes, we're anarchists. We are for free speech. We're for the maximum freedom of the individual. What are you guys doing? He goes, free speech. He told her face. Free speech is a bourgeois contrivance. At the very least, you can't have it during periods of revolution. So go home, Emma. Her mentor, Kropotkin, was under house arrest, in the Soviet Union. She left with her partner in crime, literally crime, Alexander Berkman. They each wrote books denouncing this. And Emma's was called My Disillusionment in Russia. When she went to Britain, Emma Goldman, the heroine of the left, she's this is as left as it gets. She gave a speech. She starts with a standing ovation. She's like, guys, what's going on in the Soviet Union is a nightmare. This is exactly what we're opposed to. This is horrible from beginning to end. When she was done, you could hear a pin drop because they weren't hearing it. Because they were more than happy, this is going to be a big theme in my next book, to have all these Russians over there. Let's have it be an experiment. Listen, if it doesn't work, who cares? It's the Russians. It's not affecting us. And if it works, then we get to import it. So this was really cynical, sick stuff. And when Ayn Rand, who escaped the Soviet Union, was on Donahue in 1979, I tweet this all the time. Donahue says to her, how are you so harsh against these people? How are you just condemnatory? Can't you just say you disagree? Why do you call them so evil? She goes, because I look at them. Because they don't hesitate to sacrifice whole nations. And more recently in our time, Venezuela, which you mentioned, how many people were like, hell yeah, Venezuela, what's going on there? And then later they weren't like, what have I would be perfectly fine with them being like, you know what? Just like Goldman or Berkman. They're like, I thought this was going to be great. And look how it turned out. I was wrong. And we really need to have solidarity with people of Venezuela, especially as leftists. We should worry about poor people. And there's none of that. Pin drops.
I went to Venezuela. Stores were empty. It was very, very difficult to buy things. We went to a mall, if you can call it that, and it was just a bunch of empty stores and some were open. We did go to some areas that, had food. They were wealthier areas. Luke also went to Venezuela.
Someone was literally shot and killed as soon as I landed at the airport.
But
yeah.
At the airport?
filmed.
At the airport. The airport is one of the most dangerous places you could be in Caracas, Venezuela.
Why is that?
That's where all the major robberies and crimes happen. And an Egyptian guy was literally just a couple of minutes in front of me, leaving the airport. Some guys tried to mug him. He resisted.
saw it?
They shot it. I heard the shot as I was going through customs.
But I want to
That's
point
how crazy
out,
Venezuela is.
Luke posted a bunch of videos of these markets that were just barren.
Yeah.
But there were leftists, American leftists, who went to Venezuela and went to the Potemkin markets and filmed all the glory of all their products, saying how great it was.
The Chavista areas.
Right.
The communist friendly areas that were, of course, friendly with the regime.
This is what people don't realize. Sorry, Chip. When you go to these countries where the government runs everything, they also are perfectly happy. This happened in the 90s, North Korea and many other places. They're like, okay, we've got enough food for 500 people. We've got 2,000 people. Who's going to get the food? They're not going to say we're going to do it equally. They're going to take care of their own first. In a way, you can't blame them. Because if they don't take care of their own, they're going to lose their hold on power and therefore not continue the revolution. So from their perspective, they don't have a choice. It's horrifying. And again, what we talked about earlier, Americans have no clue what this is like, but my next book's going to change.
Are there ways to dissolve monarchy that aren't violent?
Well,
Yeah, they could abdicate.
decentralized. Every problem we see comes from centralization, comes from big governments, comes from people saying that they're going to fix everyone's problems, and that's impossible. We have to realize and wake up as a people and understand that one person shouldn't be responsible for everyone else, and we should all be responsible for ourselves.
Personal responsibility.
Yes.
Yep.
Or call your friend, hire someone. It doesn't, like people are like, oh, in an anarchist society, you'd be the first one shot. I'm like, why don't I have the ability to call in my big MMA friends to be like, hey, can you be my housemate?
But hold on. If the idea was that criminal punishment deters crimes, why do we still have crimes?
Right.
We've got very harsh problems. We got, what is it, like a quarter of the world's prison population is here in the U.S.?
It's unconscionable.
There were several studies that the death penalty was not a deterrent for people committing extreme crimes. I look at it this way when it comes to like gun rights specifically. I sometimes cross busy streets. Cars don't hit me. You know why? They have brakes. Surprise, surprise. The individuals driving those cars don't want to kill somebody.
Right.
It's not because of the law. It's because they don't want to kill somebody.
And also, let's be completely sociopathic about it. They don't want the headache from damaging their car. So even if they don't value your life, there's still going to be a cost for them in terms of like, I'd rather the break than having a day of having to deal with his blood.
It's
Let's
when people get desperate is when they change. No one really wants to hurt until they're starving and they need
I
food
disagree,
and everything's
Ian.
in their
I
way.
think there's a lot of evil people out there who get off on hurting like children and weak
A
and
lot of
women.
sociopaths. Most of them are in Washington, D.C. per capita, the largest amount.
This is why my new political ideology is called Marsism, and it's where we take Elon Musk's Starship. Whenever someone, we take all of Congress and all the politicians, they go in the ship, and then it blasts off.
Then what?
What do you mean?
I've asked too much.
He just told you.
That's it. It's gone.
I like this.
The end.
I just watched Elysium.
You know what else? What happens next? We all live happily ever after.
Applause.
And then what we do is, whenever someone wins a position in office, we have smaller rockets, and they blast off. So you won. Congratulations. Right this way, sir.
See ya.
Adios. Let's go to Super Chat.
To serve government.
It must be done.
I was going to bring up Tehran, but we have chats.
Oh, yeah.
That's
Where
the
they
city-
ban politicians in a Mexican city with 30,000 people. They ban politicians, political slogans, political signs, and people deal with their problems through a community one-on-one basis. And it's one of the largest anarchist places in the world, Tehran, Mexico. I did a full documentary on it on my YouTube channel, We Are Change, and it's worth a watch because the ideas expressed there have been carried out with large populations in a peaceful, cohesive way, with people taking personal responsibility for themselves and standing up to government, to the cartels, and to the police officers that were all corrupted and doing horrible things to the community. And now they're living in peace, where literally homicides down completely, murders stopped completely, kidnapping stopped completely, all because people decided to take their life into their own personal hands.
Can I give you some unsolicited advice?
Yeah.
For you and everybody else, if you're doing something like this, get a URL that would be easy to remember. So instead of going to We Are Change, you just go to like IranianDocumentary.com. They go straight to it. So that's a cheap, easy way to promote stuff. I'm a really big proponent of that.
All of our sponsors, we do that.
Yeah. Number two is I don't think people like the ANCOMs. They get a lot of stuff right because human beings are not Lord of the Flies, despite what we're told in Hobbesian. When you look at Survivor, the only reason these people are fighting is because they have to vote each other out. When people tend to be in communities, for the most part, which is like 90%, which is a huge percentage, they really don't want headaches. They don't want conflict. They just want to get along. And like sometimes like, okay, my neighbor's noisy. Am I really going to call the cops? Even Judge Judy berated one of the plaintiffs or defendants once. She goes, she's like, I'm 900 years old. I've had lots of neighbors. Some I like, some I don't like. Some are annoying, some are not annoying, whatever. I've never called the cops on any of them. Because when you're dealing in a community, you have to, anyone who lives in a city, you have to have some little sacrifices. So I think people don't appreciate to what extent cooperation is the norm. Like you see a kid, it's just taken for granted.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.